Hello and welcome. In this video, we're gonna create the incredible sci-fi scene from the beginning of this video. What will be covered in this video? We're gonna create the basic shapes using procedural non-destructive generation and also include some assets to make our scene more interesting. We will include some details using the shading editor of Blender. We will create a simple procedural texture to make some details in the elements of our scene. To finish, we will include an HDRI, some fog, atmosphere and some final touches to our scene. Use the default cube, scale it on the Z-axis. In the edit mode, create some loop cuts to create different platforms. I'll take some edges and I'll change their tilt to make the tower look more sci-fi. We will extrude these spaces using the face selection tool. For the base, I will create more loop cuts and play with the shape to create an additional floor in the building. Once again, I will play with the angle of some edges to give a sci-fi look. With the face selection tool, I will take the sloped faces and I'll extrude to create more subfloors. Remember that we only want a basic and simple shape. Feel free to experiment and don't be afraid to change details of my guide. Now we will apply some modifiers. That will give us a more sci-fi touch. And of course more control over the shape. Put the modifiers in the screen in the same order. Use the block Remish modifiers to make a more cubic stylish shape. To better performance, put only 4 steps in Octree depth. And play with the scale like do you want. In the cast modifier, use the cubic shape option in the Z-axis. The factor allow us a different shape and form. Play with the values in the radius, the others leave them as default. Put the twist option in the simple deform modifier and adjust the angle like do you want. I recommend you only use the twist in the Z-axis. In the decimate modifiers, use collapse and seek and adjustment that don't deform too much the shape and little details. In that point, don't be afraid to experiment with this modifiers. If you want, add more modifiers, but remember that this procedural generation consumes more resources of your PC with more modifiers. Once satisfied with the results, duplicate the first tower 4 times and position these in a rectangular way. Change some values in the modifiers to obtain different shapes of these. Play with all the modifiers, feel free to do it, but pay special attention to the next modifiers. Cast, simple deform, mirror, twist and smooth. To make the round building in the middle, create a sphere, and to give it a more spatial appearance, I will use the tool created by Curtis Holt, Bigen. To install the add-in and more information about it, I will leave the link in the description. To give the look we saw in the demo, I will use Bigen's hard surface faceting style. In the ratio of the first decimate modifier, keep different low values, in my case close to 0.2 is good to me. In the second decimate modifier, still the angle value around 10 degrees or less values, do the same thing with the angle in the edge split modifier. Keep the other modifiers, or just found an adjustment that you prefer, it's up to you. For rings, create a Bezier circle. In Bevel Properties, increase the depth value to make the curve look like a torus. After that, convert the curve to a mesh. In the new torus, apply the organic shell of the Bigen add-in, and then, change to simple the subsurf modifier, put the level viewport and render in one. In the decimate modifier, keep the ratio in a low value. After that, duplicate the ring and scale it to round all towers. Now, we're gonna add some cool elements to make more realistic our scene. I highly recommend you this free assets, the Space Pack elements of Beam Studios and the Wire Astist of Andrew Rakowski. We are going to add some details and wear to the cables. In the shader editor we will create the texture of the cables. Create a new material, include a Musgrave texture. Connect it with a color ramp to control the details of these. Plug the color ramp into the roughness input. Create a bump node and also connect the color ramp with it. Then plug the bump node into the normal input of our principled BSDF. In the Musgrave texture, add a texture coordinate or just press Ctrl and T if you have Enable Node Wrangler add-in with the Musgrave texture selected. After that, be sure that the object input are connected with the vector input of the texture. Play with the detail and scale value of the Musgrave texture to make the awareness detail in the cables. Feel free to make your own adjustment. The color ramp controls the brightness and the appearance of wear. If you want a lower roughness, reduce the black color to a gray tone. When you've finished, apply the texture in all wires and make different changes in the details. For the tower material I will use a sci-fi procedural material that I've created a few days ago. Let me know in the comments if you want a video explaining how to make that material. You can use your own material. I recommend you the Displacement app to create one. I'll let all links on the description. For HDRI, I especially recommend you go to the Pixel Asteroid channel and check the HDRIs that it offers for free. The link of the HDRI video is in the description. I will modify the HDRI a bit to add some stars to it and change its color a bit. I will add the hue saturation node and bright and contrast node to modify the color. To include stars, I'll mix a noise texture with a color ramp to control the amount of the stars and an emission shader to control the bright of these. I will leave a screenshot of the nodes and settings that I used in the HDRI. For the illumination, I recommend you follow the steps in the video. To include some atmosphere, we will create fog. Create a cube in the viewport display, check the display as wire. Create a new material, replace the principled BSDF with a principled volume, combine a gradient texture with a noise texture like I do in the video, control its density using a color ramp. I will leave a screenshot of the nodes that I used to create the fog atmosphere. Please go to Andrei Sokolov's channel to see how he built this incredible nebula. Now we will include the incredible nebula that accompanies our scene. In this video I will not cover the creation of this, the link will remain in the video description. Once you have followed Andrei's steps, place your nebula in a place where you think the scene looks better, without interrupting the other elements we build. Feel free to experiment with your scene. One advice to make the look of the nebula much better is modify a little the Eve render settings. Go to volumetrics, then change the tile size to 4 pixels. Remember, less tiles increase the quality of the fog and the nebula, but also demands more resources. Play with the values to better performance. In my case, I prefer a 2 pixels tile size and 100 samples.